It's not often on this show we get to talk about something where the person in question still has a form of presence on social media, even if right now it is somewhat muted. While this quote-unquote creator ended up getting banned from YouTube, they still have an open account on both Twitter, or X, which from this point forward I'm always going to call Twitter, and Instagram. And they are something. Granted, nothing's been posted on those accounts since 2020 because they are legally not allowed to go on social media anymore. But what we're going to talk about today was brought to the attention of law enforcement and the internet back in 2021, with the event in question taking place in 2019. You can just take a quick glance at this person's Instagram and Twitter, literally 5 minutes, and you will know what this person is, and he cannot be considered your average creator. Gems like this exist on his Twitter, and these are quotes. I want to lose my virginity to a sex doll because it's made to replicate a real dead girl. I was never a fan of multiculturalism. I never claimed to be anti-bully or anti-racist. People with their heads up their asses will just label you anyways. And that is just the surface of his Twitter. Because if you continue to scroll, and I have to stress that you do that at your own peril, but you will find out what type of artist, quote unquote, DollyFlesh would become known for, as well as why it was so unsurprising as to why this ended up grabbing headlines in the way that it did. Welcome to Comfort and Death and Darkness, and this is the story of DollyFlesh. Leighton Allen Labute, born on September the 11th, 2000 in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, was known for creating clay figures and making videos on them as his main content. The videos that this guy would make were unique, to say the least. He began his creative journey back in 2016 by first uploading to Instagram, and the content in question was scenes of people made of clay who had been dismembered, with the gore of the dismemberment being a particular focus. If you're doing the math already, this was a 15-year-old-ish that was doing this. Originally, the content in question wouldn't get uploaded until 2016, but the content itself was made in 2013, which again, doing the math means that this was a 12-year-old, at possibly 13 at best, but genuinely before a teenager. The channel's name would be DollyFlesh. What that means, you can sort of infer once you actually get a grasp on his content. He wanted to go on and make claymation animation videos, but he had to settle for still frame art for the time being because he didn't have the time, knowledge, or resources to create actual clay animation. Now, just to reiterate, this horrific artwork had been being made since at the very least 2013, meaning that he wasn't even a teenager when he began making this stuff. And just because you make disturbing content or strange content doesn't mean that you're actually a strange individual. Just look at someone like David Firth, the creator of Salad Fingers. The entire Salad Fingers series is very, very weird, to say the least, but it's also surprisingly thought-provoking and deep. But unlike Firth, Labute had something going on inside his brain that would be the definitive factor in the separation between people like himself and David Firth. While something like Salad Fingers focuses on the strange and unsettling use of art and art style and engineering, Labute focused more on the depiction of serial killers committing murder, torture, dismemberment, cannibalism, rape, animal abuse, and oh so much more. He even had a recurring character in his content named Itchy the Clown, who was based heavily on the real-life serial killer John Wayne Gacy. And again, that's not something new. Many people have taken similar inspiration from real-life serial killers. To use the same example, one of American Horror Story Freak Show's main antagonist is named Twisty the Clown and is very closely based on John Wayne Gacy's Pogo the Clown persona. So how are the two different? Well, Ryan Murphy, the writer of AHS Freak Show, he didn't go on to do something quite as alarming as Labute. On the 25th of May 2020, Leighton Labute was arrested on 2 counts of murdering and abusing animals. When asked why he did what he did, Labute replied that he had been bored and was entertained by it, and he showed zero remorse for what he'd done. As such, he has actually been banned from even venturing onto social media, and is under curfew and is not allowed to enter pet shops of any kind. He was put under an 18-month conditional sentence and was placed under supervision for 2 to 4 years, meaning that as long as he stays completely out of trouble, he'll be allowed to post whatever he wants and go to wherever he wants, again, from either 2025 or 2026, depending on his behaviour. Initially, when he was arrested, he was almost instantly released on bail because his bond had only been set at, wait for it, $1,000. Now, neighbours of the Labute and fellow members of the community of Kilanoa protested against such a quick release, especially since it was unconditional, meaning that he wasn't subjected to house arrest or anything of the sort. But I've told you the very brief synopsis of what happened and what happened as a result. But what actually happened? Well, on the 6th of May 2019, Labute would make a post onto Twitter stating that he was thinking about buying some pet hamsters. About a week later, he would make a post of a vlog onto YouTube with him playing with the hamsters that he'd newly purchased on his bed. And the description of the video, which is down there, it's just past the like button. The description of the video, in which he's playing with these hamsters, simply read, "Pin stabbed, drowned, microwaved." None of that happened in the video, but at least not that video. On May 15th, he would upload a video of himself torturing and killing those hamsters. He stabbed them, mutilated them, drowned them, crushed them, and microwaved them. And it should go without saying that that is very unhinged behaviour, and we'll get to that soon. And which is probably needless to say, by the way, the video didn't last long. It was immediately removed from the platform for violation of content guidelines, and some of his subscribers actually got into contact with the authorities and called for him to be arrested. And to be honest, nothing really happened in regards to the in-between parts of the story. He just stayed out of the limelight, went to court and got sentenced, and here we are today. Very, very little happened in the in-between. But following the trial and the sentencing, the Labute family released a statement to the media. And I have notes on this, but let's read the full statement first before we make any notes. The Labute family are dedicated and hardworking members of the community who have done their best to raise their son Leighton, who unfortunately was born with major intellectual defects and suffers from severe autism spectrum disorder. The opinion of the experts involved with this case is that his intellectual defect and autism played a critical role in his behaviour that brought him before the court on these charges. This was a desperate cry for attention by a young man with the mental age of a 12-year-old who had been bullied all of his life because of his autism. The Labutes love their son Leighton very deeply. The last year has been very difficult for the family, but they are strong and will move forward as best they can, and will make sure young Leighton stays away from the areas of the internet that so negatively influenced him. We ask the community to refrain from name-calling or making threats on the internet towards Leighton or his family, and let them move on as best they can with life in peace. Alright, notes. Sorry, but like, what? So, you start off a statement about your son by talking about what good members of the community you are. Okay, weird. But then you go on to blame that this whole situation happened because of his autism, saying that he has the mental age of a 12-year-old. And then you're going on to say that you're going to do the best to make sure that he stays away from certain areas of the internet that made him become what he is today. Bear in mind, at the time of this statement, he is no child. He was just shy of his 21st birthday. So, if he's 21 with the mental age of a 12-year-old, then why are you allowing him to create all this horrific stuff that he creates? Legit, one of the clay figures he created was of a woman with her arms and legs amputated, with their organs completely exposed, with a clay depiction of himself ejaculating on what would appear to be the exposed clay woman's stomach organ. That is the strangest sentence I've ever said in my life. It's so insanely and brutally graphic. It's as if he had to study real-life amputations to get this as accurate as possible. And we're talking about someone with the mental age of 12. Sorry, but when I had the mental age of 12, which was probably like last week or something, but when I had the mental age of 12, I was wanting to play with Beyblades and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, not look at images of amputations and viscera, guts and things spilling out. This kid had to do some serious research in order to do this. I'll even go as far as to say when I was 16, I didn't look up this stuff. In fact, I don't now. This is weird. Not to mention the fact that you're saying that this all happened when he had the mental age of a 12-year-old. So what mental age did he have when he was 12? When he started creating this stuff? Because bear in mind, he first started making this stuff when he was 12 on the internet, which means that it started happening before that. I'm very tilted. Very, very tilted. There's even a post where the photo looks to have been taken from the perspective of a person holding an assault rifle, thank you America, which is being aimed at the depiction of 3 clay women. Well, I say that, it's actually 2 clay women and 1 clay child. The 3 figures are depicted in their underwear, and one of them is heavily pregnant, with the gun aimed squarely at the belly of the pregnant clay woman. You're telling me that this is like it's just his autism. This is your fault. The parents are to blame here. And then he's got other tweeted gems such as this. When I was 12, I remember having an obsession with wanting to be raped by a hot girl. I remember looking at a cover of Britney Spears in a dress and black hair and would tell lots of others, I wish she would rape me. That's not something a 12-year-old would write, unless you're both autistic and exposed to very dark parts of the internet from a very young age. According to this friggin' family, that notion in itself exposes something much, much deeper. He constantly goes on and on in his tweets about sex with sex dolls, and he seems to have a very big fascination with sexual relations with corpses of females. It's so uncomfortable to read through, which is definitely why I am not leaving a link to this stuff in the description. If you want to find it, do it on your own terms. This genuinely sounds nothing short of neglectful on the part of the family. At the time of sentencing, he's an adult, and therefore he can have his independence and freedoms before the sentencing. But at the same time, his family can't say that he needs his independence and his freedoms and also say he has the mental age of 12. Like, yes, on paper, you're an adult, but when we're talking about safety and safeguarding, are you gonna still allow that? It's thought that some of the most brilliant minds throughout our short history as a species have been autistic people, and they've been some of the smartest minds in the world. People like Albert Einstein, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Stanley Kubrick, Sir Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla. They're all heavily suspected of having autism spectrum disorder. The disorder only actually being recognised as an actual one since the 1990s. However, if you're going to excuse the killing of these defenseless creatures as Labute's autism, then his family should carry even more of the blame for this. how could they possibly have been okay with the scenes that he was creating? How could they allow him to browse the internet unhindered, allowing him to be exposed to whatever the internet has to offer? Because I'm sorry, if I'm a parent and I walk into a room and I see the things that my child has been creating, I'm getting a bit concerned. I'm looking at that going, that's wrong, that's really wrong. And then from there, I'm checking the history, I'm checking the, and then I'm like grounding them for life, because this is unhinged behavior from both sides. And remember, in their own statement, they said they were going to try and keep him away from the areas of the internet that made him what he is, that influenced him. What were you doing before? Honestly, it's actually a really good thing he uploaded that video to YouTube, because if he hadn't, he would never have been caught. Just look at some people like, I don't know, the Depraved. They were some Ukrainian teenagers that started off by killing small animals, progressing up to domesticated animals, and eventually started killing people in horrifically sadistic ways. A lot of people cite the murder of animals as the first step towards killing people. The BTK killer, Dennis Rader, he admitted to abusing animals as a child, and so did Moore's murderer, Ian Brady, and so did Jeffrey Dahmer. Once is happenstance, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a f***ing pattern. And way more than 3 prominent killers from history have begun their journeys with animals. Now, we here at Comfort in Death and Darkness are not actually saying that Labute would have gone on to kill people after killing these animals. But the signs are there for the foundation to be laid to become a murderer. Instead of receiving far harsher treatment, which the people of Kelowna really called for, Judge Paul Dome, I don't know how to pronounce that name, said that the sentencing of 18 months conditional and 3 years of probation completely fit and is an appropriate sentence, especially for this accused. After all, he has been punished for his crimes, and he has to be punished for the crimes he has committed, not what he could commit. And as well as being under curfew and not being allowed into pet stores, Labute hasn't been allowed to use the internet unless it's for approved reasons, such as like homework and stuff. But he's not allowed to delete his internet browsing history, and is also not allowed to use any form of incognito or private browsing modes. How you enforce that, on the other hand, is a completely separate question, but they're parts and terms of the probation. Whether or not his parents and authorities actually enforce these terms really remains to be seen. But to his credit, he has never posted again on any social media channels ever since his conviction. At least no media channels that we know of. But with all that being said, it's hard not to look at this case from an angle where you question the motives of the Labute family. Obviously, Labute loved to create clay models. Someone has to buy that clay for him. And are we just meant to assume that his family just gave him the clay and then never once thought, I wonder what he's making? Because that's... This whole story doesn't make sense. Or could this be even worse? And could they have seen the models he was making and saw absolutely nothing wrong with it? Now that notion is a particularly worrying one. Not only this, but some of the videos that he actually created before his conviction are still live on his Twitter and Instagram. And they are extremely hyper-sexualized. And it's genuinely hard to believe that this person has a mental age of 12 years old. The statement that was released in the aftermath of the trial kind of just, like, at least to me anyway, it kind of just reeks of, God, they were only hamsters, who cares? That's the kind of mentality I get from that statement. Regardless, Labute has been punished for his actions, but whether or not he has been rehabilitated, that remains to be seen. Eventually, he will make his way back to social media, make his way back to wherever he's not allowed to go. And for now, it's just a wait and see game. Will he go from making strange videos of himself in a bra with big clay tits, filled with liquid squirting out of them in a shower? Yes, that video exists. And now that's the weirdest sentence I've ever said. To suddenly being a little less unhinged. Or will we suddenly one day see a video on YouTube entitled One Kid, One Puppy? I guess this story is going to have to fall under to be continued. And that was the story of DollyFlesh. Look, I know autism is a spectrum because there's so many parts that you could fall under. Like, you can have mild, you can have like debilitatingly severe, and somewhere in the diagnosis is where you'll fit. But if you're a parent of an autistic child, you have a much harder job than just a regular parent. Because when you come home from work, your day doesn't stop. When you come home from work, you have to keep working, because yes, with mainstream children, you have to help them with their homework. You have to get them bathed and clothed and make sure they're taken care of. But that turns up to 11 when it's someone with severe autism. And while it seems that Labute didn't have severe autism, because you can use the internet, you can talk, you can do quite a lot that a lot of people who suffer from autism can't. But the fact that they were obviously buying him this claim, and the notion that they weren't asking him what he was making doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. They had to know what he was creating. They had to know that this is a problem, but yet they did nothing about it. They didn't even mention it in the statement afterwards. So, yeah, I have Google Alerts set up on my email account so that certain buzzwords flag up, so I can keep track of past cases, and also ongoing cases, and also things I haven't covered yet and things I could potentially cover. And I have one set up for this guy just in case, because I'm sorry, but he hasn't been put on house arrest or anything like that. I don't see how any sort of rehabilitation could have been happened here, because is he going to lessons to teach you how to use the internet properly? I doubt it. But obviously this is all speculation on my part, and again, we'll just have to wait and see. But regardless, thank you all for watching. I was going to say there's nothing wrong with finding comfort in death and darkness, but this one made me very uncomfortable. So sometimes there's nothing wrong with finding comfort in death and darkness. This time is one of the very, very few exceptions. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't, dislike, comment, share, and see you in the next one.